Hello, everyone. We are back for another CSM candidate interview, and right now we have Drake Iddon. Did I say that right?
Drake Iddon.
Drake Iddon. Okay,
Yeah, no worries.
I'm bad with names. So we have put some questions together over here at eRookies to ask about your campaign, as well as a few topics that we're fairly passionate about. So go ahead and start out by introducing yourself and tell us when and why you started playing Eve.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. So as Kashal said, I'm Drake Iddon. I started playing Eve in 2009 when I was in secondary school, and on the recommendation of a friend who basically said it's the nicest game you'll play, but it's also the most brutal game. And I fell in love, pretty much instantly. I played just as general high sec person who made their way to null sec and became a line member until for about 4 years. After that, I went to university, so I didn't have any time. I quit the game. In COVID, I came back in 2020. Found the I'd forgotten a lot of stuff, so I was immediately ganked, moving a lot of stuff from Rens to Jita,
Oh,
which made me remind me, yeah, I need to not do that this time. So it was a very Eve-like reawakening, like a reintroduction to the game, and that was when the Pochven invasion was starting, and I was thought that was really cool. Got involved there, and then when Pochven started, I've essentially been in there ever since. Most people that will know me in Eve, not saying I'm famous, but the people that do know me will know me through Pochven. Essentially, when Pochven had the seagulling issues, the seagull was me and three friends. We were stealing hundreds of billions to trillions from the locals every month, which very much angered them. But for some reason, our campaign of just being absolutely annoying non-stop in malediction seemed to pay off, and we end up being not the dominant group, but a pretty well-known, well-respected small group in the area. And then now I've essentially funneled all that money into what can only be known as the game's blingiest panther, and I just have been hunting alone in Pochven ever since. Every so often you'll see a gate camp, or a hunting Loki, or a tornado, or a miner, and then a panther will appear, and that ship will immediately disappear, and then I'll disappear as well. Um, which is essentially probably my most favorite thing of Eve to do, which is probably not everyone's cup of tea, but I find it really chill and exciting sometimes, especially when I get caught. But then, because I fell in love with Pochven so much, and it has had and has so many problems, I've essentially I see myself as the steward of Pochven. So whenever most people have problems, they will generally come to me and say, "Look, we think these people are cheating, or there's this bug that needs fixing." Um, and I've generally been quite, I think, as effective as I can be liaison between the Pochven community and the CSM. I founded the second round table in Pochven, which was in December of 22 when they published a bug fix to the mobile observatory flashpoints, which essentially overnight destroyed the region and at the same time made the impact of it on the economy more toxic because the money that was coming in was lowered slightly, but the actual destruction in the region just dropped like a stone. It essentially disappeared. So we eventually, I formed as wide as a round table as I could with people I like, people I don't like, people I don't know. Tried to get as many people as possible to come together. CCP and CSM19 were there to help out. We got our white paper published, which was read out at the CSM, and thankfully got that fixed. And then ever since then, I've been pushing CCP as best I can to get changes that most people agree to and what are ultimately best for the I would say the game as a whole and for Pochven as a healthy region. I sent you a graph, which I guess you can put up on the screen.
Yeah, just a second. Let me.
Yeah, it's just a good example of what I've been doing the past few years. And this is just one metric I've cobbled together, so I'll explain it when it comes up. There might be a bit of a delay though before I see it.
I'm not going to stream it since I got everything set up perfect. But if you
Okay.
are watching the stream, let me get rid
Yeah.
of myself.
Just let me know.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah. So, just as a quick explanation, the orange bars at the bottom are the destroyed ISK in trillions every month. The blue bar is the ISK faucet, which is primarily from the observatory flashpoints. And that blue line is essentially the ratio between ISK generated and destruction in the region, with the Citadel fights taken out because they're unique. Obviously, everyone wants to get involved on there, and once they're gone, they will eventually be gone. So I was looking at just the impact of how healthy the region is for the game. So that up there, I don't think I can see on the stream, but on off to the right hand side is another. There's the ratio number. So essentially, we were sitting around between 8 and 9 ratio, which is so there's 9 times more faucet than there is destruction in the region. That's quite unhealthy, I think, and it's steadily increasing over time. Then you can see December 22, the respawn gets added to the flashpoints, and you can see that just immediately goes straight up, which was just horrific, and that was going to keep going if we didn't do anything about it. And eventually we got that down. We tried a respawn timer of 20 minutes, which is what we requested. CCP did 35, which no one thought was enough, and the data showed that. Eventually, CCP came and said, okay, look, we'll remove the flashpoint timer and see what happens. And you can see it immediately drops back down to more or less where it was. And then it goes along over time. We're pushing for more and more changes. It's slowly creeping up. And then we get one of the, I would say, is quite a big milestone for us. We actually got the kind of roundtable patch, which CCP Ratati thanked us for and said, this patch wouldn't have happened without you. Two things was the NPC AI to deal with drones, which hasn't quite worked. It's done a little bit, but it's not done its job properly, which is unfortunate. And the big one was the acceleration gate. So the acceleration gate, you need to get into the inside of the room to complete the site. And it's small enough that a single throwaway interdictor can bubble it, die. You wait 3 minutes, you throw another interdictor. So you're throwing 200 million ISK away, and then you've got an essential 6 minutes to clear the site and get all the money, and then you leave. So as soon as that was dead, that activation radius was increased, which is what we wanted, and it worked almost, knock on wood, perfectly. And it's now, you can see this slow dip in this ratio. And now it's sitting between 5 and 7, which is far more healthy than it should be. I still think it's too high. As many people pointed out, we're sitting nearly, actually over 20 trillion now income, which is kind of ridiculous. You can argue the risk is high, which it is, but the risk is also a cost of business. So what I want to do is, if I can get onto the CSM, if I don't, I will still continue to do it as best I can, but I'm a bit hampered in that if I wasn't on the CSM. I want to get more of these changes in to bring that down to a more healthy level, and at the same time, bring the rest of Pochven up. It's a buggy as hell region. There's so many things that just flat out don't work, things that are half finished, things that are just bugged to this day. Say the rest of the sites. There's two flashpoints, mobile flashpoints. The observatory flashpoints are 99% of content. 0.9% of the rest is the World Arc flashpoint, which is good money. It gives officer loot, but it's not direct disk, so no one cares. Like, almost no one runs it. And then below that, you've got drone, drifter, trig, Eden Com, and wormhole anomalies and SIGs. And the pay is so worthless for the difficulty it has. There's no point doing it outside of standings, and that's what I want to bring up. So there's no longer one pillar of Pochven, which if CCP did something about, which they did, as soon as that pillar just collapsed, Pochven collapsed, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. I know I'm rambling a little bit because Pochven is very important to me. The other two things that I want to focus on, one is customization and monetization. CCP is sitting on a treasure trove of income, I would say. They spoke last FanFest and the FanFest before of player identity, which is perfect. You want player identity. The holograms that they were adding was a really good step. The ship skinner they have added was a good step. They were extremely greedy at the start of it, which everyone hated, which was the one thing they could have got wrong, and they did. But as long as they understand that this isn't a mobile game, don't treat people like whales, just have a small trickle of money, no plex, no evermarks, or you can add evermarks, just some plex, little bit, 50 plex, you can make a skin with the elements you find in game, and people will build up and make more skins as you release more things. Don't milk them. I don't like the production timer that you have to pay. There's no point in it. If you get rid of it, people will use it more. So that's one of the things I really want to work on. The ship holograms, they custom ship decals, things like that. If you want cat ears that people used to joke about, if you want to pay 100 plex for cat ears, why not? It's your game. And if someone else wants to shoot you over it, even better, it creates content.
Yeah.
So
100%.
I think if we could get to the point where there's a cat ear race war in Eve, we've improved the game quite a lot, I would say. And then the final thing is I've been speaking with CSM member Kazanir on this quite a bit last year, and he wants to bring a lot of change to nullsec, and I think there's potential for what we've learned in Pochven and what makes Pochven really unique, really loved, and also something that is quite resistant to the N+1 that nullsec has. I think if we take some of that to some sort of conflict driver in nullsec and even lowsec, like on a limited scale, like an event that pops up every so often, I think that will be really good for both lowsec and especially nullsec. It would also provide people a natural way to interact with other players, because a lot of nullsec is, if you're a line member, and this is something I experienced when I was a line member in nullsec all those years ago, is everything was told to me. I do what I'm told. If I want to do a certain thing, they can say, well, you can do that, but you won't get SRP. So it's not like they're telling you that you can't do it, but you're being pushed down from above to try and get you into line.
Yep.
And I see that now with the SIGs that they do, the special interest groups. It's almost like you can go and do this other content, but you're still with us, you're being monitored-ish. I don't like that just on principle. If people want to do that, it's up to them. But I want to provide more options for people to naturally interact with other people, to fight with other people, to make friends with other people, to fight with friends. And I think that would be, in the long term, very healthy for the game. And that was probably the longest introduction spiel you've had.
So far, yeah. That's okay. It was very well thought out, and I think that viewers are going to find that pretty interesting. So, now let's get into some interesting questions. You know that Eve Rookies and myself are very involved with new players. So, In your experience, what do you think the biggest challenges facing our new players are?
So I would say, first of all, the obvious one is the MPE, but I don't think that is because the MPE, CCP have done a decent job compared to previously, but it's still missing so much practical experience to players that it needs to be improved upon.
Yeah.
But past the NPE, because people can, MPEs are obviously designed to, you can go through it, you read it, you do what they say, and then it eventually opens the game up to you. And I think, as Mick said in your previous interview, once you're done, it's like, okay, have fun, you're on your own now.
Yep.
And which is quite daunting for players, but it doesn't. Then what happens is you either have a lot of players who have no one to talk to. They'll try and talk in local. Some people will respond, but generally not. So you've got a lot of people who will just be playing solo and probably get bored and leave. And then you also have people that will get swept up into alliances that recruit en masse. That's not just nullsec alliances. There's highsec alliances that do it as well.
Yep.
There's probably one or two lowsec alliances, although I don't know of any of them. I assume there would be. And the primary goal of the people that are mass recruiting is primarily, so for nullsec, it's an extra body for essentially the N+1 meta. That's not something that nullsec can avoid. If they don't do it, their enemy's going to do it. So I understand why they do it. So it's one for the N+1 game, and two, it's for tax. So they become a cog in a machine that they know nothing about, and they have no context of what the rest of EVE is. So either they don't like it and they leave the game, generally, because they don't know anything else, or they will like it, which is fair enough, but they will be, in my view, stuck in a rut, which most people don't get out of. They will go to nullsec, they will be eventually be put in a ratting ship, they'll be told how to rat, they'll be told how to do some mining if they want to, some industry, but they're always doing what the alliance needs to train them for, and past that they don't have any impetus to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
And then after a certain time, because it's an alliance, there's lots of people, they will form bonds, which is good. They'll have camaraderie, but they will then be very hesitant to go and find content elsewhere, even if it's to say, hey guys, it's been really fun, I want to come back, I want to go over here and do this for a while, and then I'll come back. Some corps, not many now, I don't think, will actively tell them no. If you leave now, you can't come back because you're a spy. Generally doesn't happen much anymore, but it does still a little bit. Or the more common one now is, well, we do that content if you join the SIG group, which is they're still on the rails essentially doing the content. They don't naturally get to interact with other people. They don't join other corps and alliances. They don't learn other cultures. They won't. They generally the entire time they're stymied on their progression, which is something I think is quite important that people understand, especially in my experience, because when I was in nullsec, I did the exact same thing. I ratted, I went on call to arms, I did mining, I did production. For 2 weeks, I thought I was really cool when I learned Sinos, and I was like, yes, I'll be your Sino to bring your ship in. And no one really cared. And I was there, like, being really happy as just a Sino outside the station for hours every day. And as soon as I left it, and found other places, which Pochven really helped me do, my world was opened up.
Yeah.
And it was hard. Of course it was hard, because suddenly you've got no training wheels, you've got no support network. It can be difficult. So what I'm trying to get to is, if they go down that route, it's very hard to get out of it, get out of the rut, and truly experience EVE how you might want to experience it, because you don't know that potential is there, you don't know that experience is there. So I'd say
So,
that is the core issue that I see.
so one of the things that CCP wanted to do, and they kind of did it, but not all the way, kind of like unfinished content. Not that they would ever do that. They wanted to get people, doing.
I live in the region of unfinished content.
Yeah, so do I. They did the air career missions or the air career
The path, yeah.
path or whatever. And then they also did the daily opportunities. And they're trying to lead people into faction warfare, since that's the lowest, I guess, bar entry into like PvP in the world that Eve is, the Hard Knocks world. But
Yeah.
with the air opportunities and the dailies, they just don't have a good bridge yet.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to bridge that gap? Because I think we all see what they're trying to get at. They're just
Yeah.
missing it.
Because the devs always go on about, we find that players that lose their ship early stay more. The reason why I think that is if you're stuck in, for example, high secondary mission, you have your ship that you're building up, and you get emotionally attached to it, which happens, especially for like capital ships or flagships. But they overinvest into it because they don't know any better. And then when they inevitably die to gankers, to a mission they didn't understand, to a disconnect or something like that, suddenly their entire ego of their player to that point is completely shattered and they have nowhere to go. So them learning that ships are expendable early is really important, which is why I agree with CCP wants to push people down the faction warfare route. What I think needs to happen is the MPE that they've done now with the Astero and then the mining. Good step, nowhere near finished. The moment they come out of that, it essentially goes down the trap of, hey, go and do these 10
Career
mission
missions,
chains, and then go and do opportunities. And it's trying to push you to faction warfare, but doesn't push you into faction warfare. So an idea I had would be, first of all, you have the MP as it is now, you have the Astero, you lose the Astero, which is CCP's way of trying to show people that dying is fine, but it's not your ship, it's the tutorial ship, so no one has any connection to it, emotional or monetary connection. After that, they can do the mining and production, then they need to do scanning, then they need to do PvP. And the way I think, this is just me spitballing ideas, is there should be one system in Eve where all the new players go, no one else can enter it, it's only new players. And it's essentially the red versus blue system that we used to have as two alliances that were player run. A system like that, as a tutorial where people are being directed to go to a center flashpoint where they can shoot each other. So they're given enough materials in mining during the tutorial to produce a ship and produce guns to fit the ship up how they want with what they've got available, and then to go and bash their head against other players and some NPCs. And then after a while, they're going to die. Hopefully, that's the idea. And they'll learn how to shoot other people and maybe a bit of tackling and webbing or something like that. Then after that, they get some sort of certification, which is a gate pass or something like that. And they exit the gate and it sends them to the 1.0 system where they should be.
I like that.
And then it goes from, yeah. And then you can't go back. So the other issue of player griefers that, even though it's against the EULA, who go and bait and gank new players, that is gone. And while instancing, I have a fundamental hatred of instancing in Eve, that is a very controlled instance that existing players can't interact with. And I think that's potentially a really good implementation. Obviously, players will do what players do and break things, but I think that's an incredibly good idea.
Okay, so here is the big question. When's the last time you ran through the NPE?
Ooh, about 2 months ago, I was
Okay.
trying to see if the Aerostero bug to import the Aerostero out of the game, out of the tutorial area, so I could PvP with it was still there. It turns out it wasn't. So, but yeah, I did do the entire run through of the station explodes. You go into the Astero, the Basilisk and the Orcas come and they repair you. You do a fleet warp, and you go and you tackle some things. Then you ECM the battleship Macarial, I think. It kills you, and then you get transported, and you get podded and transported to the 1.0 system.
Very cool. I can tell you
Yeah.
that sitting around the table with the rest of the CSM, when I asked that question, both the rest, I think Mike Azariah was the only one who was just like, yeah, last week. And everyone else is just kind of like not making eye contact.
It's a very good step that compared to what they had before, because what they had before was almost non-existent. It was Aura telling you to do things, and the moment you asked her to shut up just for a second, she was gone forever.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's a good step. They've done a really good like first pass of it, but it's just nowhere near feature complete. And
I agree.
unfortunately, that's because Eve is so monumentally deep and huge. How do you even tackle doing the NPE like that
Oh, I know.
without scaring the shit out of new players?
Yep. I
So
personally, I just want to know how the story ends. They got me engaged with the story of the
with
black
with the
box.
rift, yeah,
Yeah, it's like, okay, what now?
they could have tied it in with the because I did the Sisters of Eve arc the other day to get some standings. You know that part where they have the rift with the drone that keeps
Yeah.
disappearing,
Yep.
and then that agent, Serpentis agent, destroys it, saying you'll never know the secrets of the rogue drones. And then nothing happens with that. It could be that could be part of it. Yeah,
So,
the MPE they have a lot of work to do.
uh,
Unfortunately, it depends how much dev time they have to allocate to it.
yeah,
It's a hard one to solve.
ask me about that in 4 years. So the next section that we're going to go to is community. If you know anything about Eve Rookies, we are really big on community, and that's both in game and out of game. We believe that everyone can be part of our community, regardless of, what corp they belong to, or alliance, or their beliefs, or abilities. Like, we just want to get people in a ship, undocked, and having fun with each other, engaging with the game.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much our definition of community. You don't have to be connected in game by corporation or alliance. What's your definition?
It's essentially the same because so when the Seagull era in Pochven happened, it was me and three friends, essentially doing the most obnoxious things to annoy people. But at the same time, a community developed there of people that absolutely loathed us and wanted to shoot us, people that liked us but obviously they wanted their money. And that grew over time, and we essentially became the people that shot absolutely everyone. As Pochven grew out of its young stage. And now Pochven is essentially a mishmash of so many groups that know each other very intimately. Sometimes a bit too intimately, which I'll touch on later. But it's people that you would most likely have a beer with at FanFest, but people you would fleet with to kill another group at one point, and then maybe those two groups decide they want to kill you to steal something and get a flashpoint at a later time, which is kind of a cool thing that Pochven did. But yeah, so I would say community is everyone you interact with that has a growth experience. So not positive or negative, because positive could be you win or a trade. Negative could be you lose your ship to them, they gank you. But it's still a growth experience, and that's what I think community should be.
I like that. So the other thing that Eve Rookies is very against, and we have core values that we don't do toxicity and we don't do drama. So toxicity by our standards is basically everything that we just shouldn't be talking about or even thinking about in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
what is your stance on toxicity, and do you think it's actually an issue within the game?
First of all, I'll say that I agree with the no toxicity stuff, but I absolutely disagree with the no drama stuff because drama is what Eve is. Drama is the core of Eve. It's
That's
great. It's why
that's
people
just
keep
our
coming
group.
back. But yeah, for toxicity, I assume toxicity you mean like PvP and ganking and stuff is fine
Perfect.
because that's Eve. Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Even some minor
out.
salt is perfectly fine.
Yeah, salt and smack talking in
Yep.
local chat is fine to a degree.
Yep.
I would say toxicity is where suddenly you bring real life into it.
Yep.
Like, I would say I have quite a lot of racist experiences, which is
Yep.
weird because I'm just English. Generally, it's not a thing for me. But it's not something I experience on the regular. But I would say a lot of players from, I won't even name the country, there's no point, um, are extremely racist in local.
Yep.
And I end up having to report them all the time to say, like, look, I understand smack talk is fine, but if I said the same things that you were saying to me, I would be banned instantly. So you need to, you need to not talk, or you should be warned. So bringing real life into it should be like the red line, and that's when I mentioned people being too intimate in Pochven. So because Pochven has so much ISK and there's big egos involved, and there is RMT involved in some cases for multiple reasons. Some people are from poor countries, some people just want money. You know, those people need to be banned, and I do try and work with people to get them banned. RMTers and cheaters need to just get fuck out, basically, as far as I'm concerned. But what's happened, what always happens when real life money is involved, is things get incredibly nasty. And that's leaked out into doxing and in real life harassment and real life threats. There's one person, I won't name who he was, I won't mention what happened, but when I heard it, I was shocked is probably the wrong word, but it's the part where you feel like, oh, this is actually so serious that no one that I know is equipped to deal with it properly. And essentially, there was no support network that was able to be offered to him because of where he was in the real world. He was in a country that is at war, and people were essentially threatening and had gone through with that threat to try and get him conscripted into said war.
Oof.
And I just said, look, there is no support network that I know of or that CCP has access to that can help you. You need to leave the country. I don't know if he's taken that advice, but that's the sort of shit that I personally have dealt with, and I fucking hate it. Basically, I can't imagine being in that situation. So I think CCP is their player safety policies is a good step, but again, I don't think they're doing enough. Obviously, I'm quite blind going into that. I don't know any other people that have used it to good effect. Obviously, there's things like broadcast for reps, which is a great system for people that are in any walk of life. But I think that needs to be improved upon. I don't know how you would be able to get to a level to help everyone, but
Yeah.
more investment and more visibility would be really good. And I think CCP need to essentially pull their thumb out of their ass and actually crack down on it really hard whenever they see it.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're trying, but I don't think they're doing a stellar job, I would say.
Yeah, I think that they should look towards way more toxic games like Valorant, and there's a few others
Yeah.
that are really trying to crack down on it.
Yeah, which is also my, even though this isn't Eve and this isn't CSM isn't for E Frontiers. E Frontiers has been announced. Obviously, people know about it because there's playtest going on. That has a crypto side, and I think that is a walking land, like just a landmine a minefield waiting to happen for CCP, because you've taken essentially, I'm assuming it's essentially the same game as Eve, but with crypto on it, to whatever degree. And you've taken Eve, which is extremely high and intense conflict and interpersonal conflict, but is not supposed to be connected to real life money in any form, and even that can get out of hand sometimes. You then move that and add it to the point where, yes, these are your assets and they have real life value, and you can make a living from this. That's going to go horrifically, I think. And I think there's chance of success. There's chance it goes really well if they introduce some blockchain technologies and they want to do something with players. They mentioned in an interview players like coding their own things, like cool tech. But if one thing goes wrong in real life because someone scammed someone in game or killed someone's ship and they retaliate in real life, that could probably put the coffin nail in CCP. Like, that's the sort of PR that would tank a company. And I think they need to be really, really careful on that.
I definitely agree, and we're gonna have to wait until the NDA is lifted to see what
Yeah.
it really is. So
I assume the game's coming out before the NDAs lift anyway, so
probably.
yeah.
Luckily, we're Eve CSM. We're not Eve Frontier CSM.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then the follow-up question to this is, in my personal recent experience, as well as experience of members of Eve rookies, there are certain areas of Eve where rookies are pushed off to, and there is a lot of casual racism and toxicity. If you personally encounter it, what do you plan to do? I know you mentioned a little bit, but
yeah, the general thing is, like, obviously you can call it out, and they're gonna say no. If people are gonna do that, they probably don't give a shit what you think about. So just remove yourself from it. If they do it to you in game, just report it. I think Mick said this as well.
yep.
And he said also talk to a GM. I would say also speak to CCP Swift, CCPB, CCP Zealous, any of the community devs, even CCP Jotun, who is, I don't think he's a community dev, but if you just say, look, these people are being extremely racist or whatever in local, they will crack down on it. Like, for one example, which is during the Seagull era, we were spicy boys in local. We tried to push people's buttons, and my corp CEO, Beta Page, who in real life I love, he's a great guy, but he said something stupid about what he said. He said, they're the crabs, I'm the master, go and pick me cotton. And I was like, you're gonna get banned for that. Don't be stupid. And the day later, he got a week ban, and I was like, yeah, you fucking deserve it. Don't be fucking stupid. And thankfully he hasn't done it since. Like, that's the sort of response time that you should expect. You say something in local or whatever that is over the line, you should get hits very quickly to say, don't fucking do that. You've got one chance to not do that again.
Okay.
So yeah, report it, and I would probably not even wait. I would just say, like, look, this guy's being a dick in local. Like, not even a dick. He's saying slurs in local or something like that. It's not on. And then one of the devs will say, yeah, you're right. Like, just get rid of him.
Yep. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to go into some specially formulated questions about what would you do if you become CSM. So the first one, let's pretend that you make it onto CSM19. You get into your first meeting, you learn the plans for the next expansion, and you find out Pochven isn't in any of it.
Oh no. I'm actually I'm used to that though, because Pochven's just left out. He's the stepchild.
But the question is what do you do?
The first thing I would do is, if I have no experience in it at all, which I think would be unlikely because I've done quite a lot in Eve, I think alliance leadership I've not done, and tools for FCs I don't really FC much, but production, PvP, PvE, incursions, Pochven, nullsec, lowsec. I've done, I think, most things, but I would, like I've done with Pochven, I've cultivated a network of people who I trust their judgment, and I trust other people in the network to push back on if they think it's wrong, so I can get a clear picture. There's going to be squabbling, but that's fine. Just look through the squabbling and try and get a consensus. I would speak to the CSM members, obviously. I would speak to the devs to see what their, not what they want to do, what their intention is, because what CCP put into the game is generally completely at odds with what their intention was. For example, Equinox, which has just been not the best patch so far. It's had a lot of ups and downs, and people, every single patch they do, people criticize CCP quite rightly for,
No comment.
because yeah, it was a patch this week that completely destroyed a play style and turned what was supposed to be a conflict point into
Don't-
just a faucet.
Yeah, don't
and
say
at
the
the
word.
same time, and at the same time, would collapse the economy of said faucet to the NPC buy order level.
Yep.
Yeah, but so I would educate myself as much as possible in a reasonable amount of time. But at the same time, even if I can't do that, I would wonder, how can I add to this? How can I use my experience to say, well, what happens if you do this? Would this be a better idea? Like, for example, good example of Pochven is one of the big reasons why I think Pochven is resistant to N+1. It's not immune to N+1, nowhere is, but it's resistant to N+1, is the prolific use of dead space. I think dead space grids are great because they provide a limitation that N+1 generally can't get around, not without extreme organization, which generally N+1 groups don't have all the time. They do sometimes, not all the time. So, for example, say there was a nullsec patch for, say we're talking about Equinox and they were talking about the new sites, and I say, right, okay, well, what about some dead space instances for groups that pay out a lot? There's very few of them, and they border between alliances. Obviously, some alliances are allied, but they may clash over that if the money is good, which is essentially what made Pochven good. Even allied, like coalition allies, like Frat and Horde, even Fraternity and Fraternity, they have groups within themselves that have clashed over the money, which I think is great because it's a natural. The game has produced something that wouldn't have happened in the organization. So for Equinox, my idea to improve it would be, what if you did that as a potential content generator and another way to get line members out of the basically poverty-stricken ratting system, which is so outdated it can bear children. So yeah, that would be my input
Okay.
on something that I don't personally engage in most of the time.
So you brought up Equinox, my absolute favorite topic, especially the last two patches.
I'm sure you've had many, many great meetings about it with
Oh yeah.
certain CSM members vehemently
Oh,
pushing or not pushing for certain things.
and you know, the MPSI and the small game community on the other side. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Very
I'm
wonderful
sure it's been
conversation.
very, very emotional and very. I'm sure it's always been professional but above board.
So, players expect the CSM members to fix issues, and they demand that the CSM go and demand changes from CCP. Have you given any thought on how you're going to balance the limitations placed on you as a CSMs, being an advisor, having the NDA, and making sure players feel heard?
Good question. Let's think. So the key thing would be communication. If someone suggests something to me and I don't think it will happen, or even if I try, I'll say, look, I can put it forward, but one, I can't tell you if CCP take it well or badly. Only they can tell you that unless they give me permission, which they likely won't. But I'll try to bat for you if I can. If I disagree with their stance, I will say, look, I don't think that personally. I don't think that's right. There may be other CSMs who do, and point them to other CSMs, because even if I personally disagree with something, that doesn't mean I'm correct. And I think that's a big quality that CSM members ought to have. Like, even if it's like against my specific play style and I don't want it in the game, you should still push them in that direction because I'm obviously biased in that decision. On the flip side, if there's something that I feel that should be communicated, that is given in the CSM meetings, which is under NDA, I will immediately say to them, please, can you give us something that we're allowed to say? Give us a pre-written like spiel, and then I can go to the players and say, look, this is a pre-written spiel because I'm NDA, but this is what CCP says I'm allowed to say. So at least there is something. On going on further on that point, I think the white paper system needs to be expanded a bit. The CSM white paper from the summit.
Yeah.
It used to be a formal document that was vetted and redacted for things that are under NDA. But then it was published, and there was a blog post and says, "Here is the document. Here's what everything went through." There was a big period of that not happening. It's now started again a little bit. First as a forum post, then as a document. I still don't think it's up to snuff. There's not much publicity in the publication.
Right.
So I think I would definitely push for that. And even maybe more than just the CSM summit, depending on how much gets said and done in the non-summit meetings, which happen, I'm thinking weekly. Obviously, I'm at the beck and call of CCP if I'm under NDA. So if they say no, I will just have to tell other people, like, look, I've tried, but they've said no. And if CCP don't like me saying that, like, then they can give me something to work with. Because if they say no, I'm going to say, look, I can't tell you anything. And the other thing is something that I think it's Brisk did, and I've fought with Brisk on stuff a lot, but Brisk takes notes at meetings all the time. And I am not the most accurate typer, but I'm a fast typer, so I will try and do that. Try and carry on the work that Brisk started during the meetings if no one else is doing it.
Cool. So, since we are down to our last about 12 minutes, we're going to go to a few community questions that came out. Since you are the Pochven person, what's your stance on multi-boxing?
As long as it's a person controlling them and there is no automation or cheats or anything that helps them involved that gives them an advantage, I'm all for it. I don't personally like multi-boxing. I have one Omega account, and on that I've got 3 characters, 2 of which I've never used. They're just there to reserve funny names. But Drake Iddon is my only character, essentially. I was going to make a Titan alt, and because I wanted to buy one of the Pochven Titans, and then because the sellers thought that I was going to use it in PvP, which I was, they was too scared and refused to sell it to me, so that didn't happen. But yeah, I don't like multi-boxing personally, but I will not stop other people doing it as long as they play by the rules.
Okay.
It does have a huge impact on balance.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to learn ways to try and get around that. I'm not saying I can do that. I will try my best. But generally, people who multi-box, especially in PvP, are generally extremely, disgustingly talented players.
Yeah.
And so one of the people in Pochven, who I even asked, like, why do you multi-box this much? And I think he's up to 26 accounts. And that's multiple ship types. Obviously a load of Marauders, because that's the meta in Pochven. He has multiple different ship types. He's got command ships in there. He's got Bushers. He's got Dictors. He's got Scouts. And when I look at it, I just like, how do you not have an epileptic seizure when you're tabbing through all these accounts? And he said to me, like, I've never felt more in control than when something goes right in every single way when I'm controlling every single part of a fleet. It's
Holy
like
cow.
there is no way that I could get into that mind frame.
No, I regularly box with. Well, I don't say regularly. I hate boxing, but in order to get a fleet out with real people, I will take one for the team and do it. The community doesn't like me too because I always blow up claymores. You know, collateral damage. But I can barely take care of 4 characters. I can't even imagine 26.
Yeah, it's
And
just
PvP.
yeah. I remember the first time I saw like genuinely good multi boxes in PvP, which is generally mainly people from like Goring played and some others from the bringing solo back. Solo, even though they use alts, but is still one person, which is fair enough. Where they have generally like a battleship or a marauder that's quite blingy, and they'll have a malediction who is doing the tackle, and they're controlling both at the same time, which I thought was amazing. And I had an idea to try it, and then I realized that one, I didn't like the idea of losing control even temporarily of one account, and at the same time, I think I would get frustrated with myself as well while learning. So, so that's the first time, and then obviously Pochven happened, and then after the seagulling activity was stopped, essentially what we pivoted to was we just ran the sites ourselves, and we had Beta Page and Aura who multi-boxed Osprey Navy issues, which were designed to be so throwaway that you didn't even care if you shot yourself. But when they were multi-boxed and it went slightly correct because they kept messing up, it was so good that that's how we end up projecting our power. And then from there, multi-boxing has just got more and more cutthroat and competitive. It's got to levels that I couldn't even dream of, which is absurd. So, and I definitely don't want Eve to lose that, even though there's challenges around that, which people have legitimate concerns about, especially like income scaling and like mining as well. Like,
Yeah.
how can one miner who wants to do industry possibly outproduce multi-boxers who are doing the exact same thing? Like, it unfortunately, it's Eve is a hyper-capitalist system, and assets beget more assets.
It really does. So, second to last question of the night. What do you think the most pressing issue in Eve is, like overarching the whole entire game?
I want to say the thing that affects, I personally would say negatively affects most content in the game is Marauders. That's simply a ship balance thing. Um, I would say they're overtuned. Obviously, loads of people love Marauders, but I think they're just far too good at what they do now. And everything now is it's the death of creativity almost because you had a million ways to optimize something in the way that you thought was best. And people would say like, why don't you do this ship? Why don't you do that ship? Why don't you go to a capital or a super capital? And all of those were to varying degrees legitimate criticisms and suggestions. But now the main thing is, why don't you just do a marauder? And it's almost like you can say, yeah, that is actually the right idea because it's the most scalable ship. It's a very tanky ship for its size. It's an extremely mobile ship if you alternate micro jump drives and Bastion. It's it's just an obnoxious ship,
So, do
and
you,
I understand why people like it, but I think it is infected. It's almost like the new hack meta, except hack meta was almost specifically nullsec, whereas marauder meta is everywhere.
so do you think it's more problematic in PvE or PvP or both?
Both, I would say. In low sec, probably not as much, um, because people love frigates in low sec and they will do all sorts of stuff. There will be a lot of marauders, but generally not. In Pochven, like just look at the stats. Like I think because I track the MER every month, and last month's destruction was the highest ever the month before that was the highest ever. And in the last 2 months, I think it's something like 65% of all destruction and kills was from or to a marauder, which is just, it's so, what would you say? It's almost suffocating. And then the same thing happens in PvE. You want to wrap the best, you're probably best doing it now that Thunderchilds were nerfed, a marauder. If you want to do wormhole stuff, this is something that I assume Mick would agree with, and what Mark campaigned on multiple times is the Marauder stifled everything, and all PvP and PvP was just Marauders. If you want to do high section incursions, it's Marauders. It's just something needs to change. I don't know the anathema to it because I only know it from a Pochven perspective, but it needs to be looked at. Probably the thing I would suggest is Stitch Canelan's change, which he wanted just for T1 battleships, which was the roll bonuses to plates, shield extenders, and the bulkheads, gets removed from T2 ships.
Yep.
That is directly nerfing my playstyle because my Panther used to have 2 shield extenders on it. I needed those 2 shield extenders to not get instantly one-shot by drifters in Pochven if I decloaked. After that buffer, I've gone down to 1, and it's gained me an MJD or tracking. And I want that gone simply because one, Black Ops didn't need it, and Black Ops are also in low sec. They're quite common they're common everywhere. Black Ops is a ganking system. I don't think they need the buffer bonuses.
No.
and maybe it will also fix the Marauders. I don't think it will in certain contexts, but it may be a step. But yeah, that's I would say that's probably the most prolific issue in EVE. There's obviously others. RMT and botting is just a constant plague that every game has to deal with.
Yep.
And I would like CCP to... I don't know how I would sell it to them because you would have to hire more people to investigate, more GMs, and from what I've seen, GM tickets are taking long to get to respond to, so I can only assume they've downsized their GM team. Or they used to outsource it, and they've got a different outsource, I don't know. But RMT and botting, I think, is absolutely cancerous to the game. It's absolutely cancerous to every game.
Yep.
And I wish it wasn't a thing. I would probably suggest something like a new ISD division of people that are motivated and proficient in finding and reporting bots, just to give them and to say you can volunteer for this, and we'll give you plex for so many things, and we'll give you the tools to find them more easily. If I had an ISD character to have a Polaris frigate to be able to be invisible, and I could follow some of the Marauder fleets around, because a lot of those were input broadcasted, and I spent months and months getting input broadcasters banned. I still do it today. I've made a load of tools thanks to the EVE XL tools that were added to Microsoft 365. So people can just say, look, I think these people are input broadcasting. So I say, send me the logs, and I will pull all the data, and I can see it basically lays out where all the activations were they the same tick? Was it the initial activation? And it adds as much context as I can. So I can say, no, I don't think this is input broadcasting, and here's why. Oh, it might be, please get more data, or this is most likely input broadcasting. I've then been able to take that evidence. I've told the people that found it to report them as bot, and I will go to a liaison in TCP and say, look, can you look at this bot report from this time, from this character? Here are all the logs, and here's my analysis of it. And it's still not as fast as I want it to be, but I would say it's probably the most effective it's been in Pochven. I would like more tools like that and more enabling of CCP to allow for that. Obviously, you need to control false positives and overzealous reporters.
Yep.
Which I've tried to do to the best of my ability. But that's probably one of the other big pressing issues in EVE.
Okay, so we have one last question that you have about 1 minute to answer. What
Oh
other?
dear,
I know.
that's like one sentence.
I think we are around 56, 57 candidates for CSM19. What other candidates would you like to see elected alongside you?
So this will be a bit of a mixed bag. First one is obviously Phantomite. Phantomite has been a voice of lowsec and general pro content his entire Eve career. And it's also very funny to me that he gets on the nerves of null blocks all the time. I find it hilarious. But he's also, him being an annoyance to them also makes them have to um, elaborate on why they are for something or against something, which I think is huge. On the flip side of the coin, I would say Kazanair. Kazanair is from Goons. He has a vision, which I discussed with him a lot, on what nullsec could be that isn't just the null block cesspit of non-content that it is right now. And I think he has a genuinely good idea from what I've seen, and I think he should be have his more chance to push that. And every time I've spoken to him, I've had a few arguments with him, but he's generally been a upstanding character. I would say we need at least one person on the CSM for new players. So, like yourself, because you're running, and I think from what I've seen, you've done a good job. And then also probably a ship balance person. So the only one I can think of really is Iter. I don't know if I pronounced it right. He's genuinely a skilled pilot. I haven't spoken to him on stuff, but he's the sort of experience that I think would be valuable on the CSM. And then, other than that, I would say there should be more slots dedicated to people who are area experts. So, say Kazanir for nullsec, wormholer like Mick. If Mark is if Mark is recommending Mick, I don't know if he is allowed to because he's CCP Jotun, then I think he's probably a good choice. And from watching his interview with you an hour or so ago, I'd say that's a pretty good choice as a wormhole one. Myself for Pochven, obviously, please vote for me. And then Isaac, I think, obviously needs some form of a voice, even though I will probably disagree with everything they stand for, because most high sec people are anti-ganking and anti-content, and I vehemently disagree with that. I still think they need a voice, even if it's for them to get absolutely stripped down in arguments afterwards. At least they have a voice. I think that's my take on which other candidates should be elected.
Okay, fantastic. I think I only have around 10 viewers right now. Someone big is probably on that is taking everyone. If there's anyone there that would like to ask any questions, please feel free. And while we wait for the questions, where can people find you if they want to ask you more about Pochven or anything from the interview?
I'm on the Eve Online Discord in my CSM thread, which I guess I can link now. Um, at the bottom, it's got my Discord that people can DM. If you DM the other one, which doesn't have the MOB at the end of it, I will try to look at it, but that was a previously hacked account that I got back months later. So I will try to reply to them, but try to message the right one. Also in game, send me a message and I'll reply. I log on at least once a day when I get home from work to do if I'm PvPing or if I'm hunting or if I'm doing market orders or something. I'll see the message. And so yeah, on Discord and Eve are the best ones.
Okay, very cool. It doesn't look like that there is anybody who is awake, alive, have
It's
questions.
obviously because I've gone to such lengths during every single question that there is no questions to ask.
You were very detailed, so everyone knows everything there is to know about Pochman now. But of course, we can continue the conversation on your forum thread, and I'll upload this and keep an eye on the comments. Maybe somebody will want to engage with you there.
Yep, and I'll obviously be in the Eve Rookies Discord, so if anyone wants to ping me in the CSM18 channel, I guess.
I
Or
have a
any-
CSM19 channel now.
Even better.
So thank you so much for coming. It was enjoyable. I learned a little bit more about Pochven myself.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.